Okay, everybody, welcome to this call. I'm really thrilled to have Joe with us today. Uh, he he really touched my life in a way he didn't realise. Uh, there was a point where I wanted to know more about the principles, but not just from one person or two or three people. Uh, so I went to, I think it was 3PGC, looked up the profiles of other practitioners of the principles. And one of them was Joe. So I checked out his website to see what he had to offer. And he had a lot of books written and has some things you could download, you could listen to. One of the books that I read was called this one, Slowing Down to the Speed of Love. Okay, and so I began reading it, and one thing that struck me more than anything else was the metaphor. Uh, I heard from other people that that they spoke of a glass of water, but it's very muddy, and when you leave it alone, then the mud settles, and then you can see clearly. For me, it was like, okay, now it's clear. Now what? But the metaphor that Joe put in his book really took it to a whole new level for me. Joe, would it be okay if I read a little excerpt from the book?
Sure, absolutely, bro. Whatever you want to do is fine.
Thank you. Okay. What if we realize that love and happiness are already present within us? Think of it for a moment. Love is like the jewel on the bottom of a pond obscured by the murky water. All our flaying about clouds the water more and more as we search for the jewel. When we let go, have faith in our innate health, and become still, the silk settles and the clarity of the water emerges in our consciousness. We see the jewel of love that has been there all along. And that was the first time I really began to sense what well-being meant. It was the first time where the direction in which I could look to was within myself. So I really recommend that book. It really, I couldn't put it down at all. And I do wish that more and more people knew of the book. So thank you for that book. It was really touching, and I shall treasure it for the rest of my life. So happy to have you here, Joe.
It's really good to be here with you, Brett, and all of you who are yet unnamed, and I don't know you. I'm not sure how you handle this with a large group, if people introduce themselves, or should I just talk a little bit about myself? Maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about my own background and how I came to this understanding called the three principles, or health realization. It's been called many things over the years, but I was a psychologist and am a psychologist. I often call myself a recovering psychologist. I'm getting over it slowly but surely. But I spent the first 10 years after graduate school working in a more traditional approach to counseling and to drug treatment, alcoholism treatment. I worked in the area of addictions, but my specialty was family therapy. So I did a lot of work with couples and families, and a lot of the therapy was very, very painful for the clients and for the therapist. And so after about 10 years, I was starting to burn out. I was working with people with very severe mental health issues, dual addiction, sexual trauma, all kinds of things. And I was starting to not see through the muddy water. I was just, all the love and the spirit that I came into my profession with was starting to wane. It was starting to go away because I was so caught up in my analyzing and my thinking about my clients and wondering what to do and what technique to use and what would the experts do, you know, and doubting myself often and not really knowing how to listen to myself basically and really trust that inner voice of wisdom, that jewel at the bottom of the pond that is us. That's our true identity, who we really are. And it is resilient. It's innate, it's healthy, it's all complete, it's there. But I didn't know that. I thought I had to figure out the right way to live. And I did yoga and I meditated and I did every workshop available to mankind for many years and always searching and trying to find, stirring up the water a lot. I was always stirring up the water, trying to find the answer. So after about, I think I was 33 when I was newly divorced about 3 years before that. My life was kind of not going well. And I was fantasizing about leaving my profession as a psychologist and working with plants be easier than people. Trees. I love the wilderness, so I was thinking of maybe I could get a job as a forest ranger somewhere. And then my dear friend, Dr. Keith Blevins, who some of you may know because he's been to England many times and spoken at Ticcin and done other seminars there. He and I went to graduate school together, and he called and told me about this new psychology that had no name at that point. This man, Sydney Banks, had a revelation, an epiphany, and through that revelation, people around him started to change in very dramatic ways. People with mental health issues, just generally unhappy, addictions, all kinds of problems, just by listening to us, the simplicity of what this man had to say changed their life. So he kept telling me about it, and I was very skeptical because I had grown very cynical about helping anyone, that there was any answer out there. And he was living in California, and California in the United States has a reputation of being a little flaky. They're on the West Coast. So anyway, so I was reluctant, but then he kept persisting, and he called and said there's going to be a conference at the University of Miami Medical School, and Sydney Banks will be there, and many of the other founders of this new psychology would be speaking at the medical school. And it was winter, and it was cold in Minnesota, and it was warm in Florida, so I got on the plane and went down not knowing what to expect. And 3 days later, my whole life was completely turned upside down. It was a double whammy. I met Sydney Banks. He scared the bejeebies out of me. I don't know if that translates in British vernacular, because everything he was saying went completely against all the years of training I'd had as a psychologist. You know, I thought the past was the only thing that really mattered, and he was saying it didn't even exist. It was all thought. And he was saying things that didn't make sense to my personal thought system. So my brain was having a meltdown, and my heart was opening up. It was very confusing. I didn't know what to do. At the same time, and this is kind of comical, I fell in love with my friend Keith, who invited me. His wife's best friend was there, and I fell in love with her that same weekend. So I met Sid Banks and fell in love with my wife, who we just celebrated last week our 32nd year of marriage. So we've had a wonderful life together. And I didn't know at first, is this because I'm falling in love that I'm feeling so happy and so good, or have I had some sort of awakening? So I went back to my clinical practice in Minnesota, doing counseling, you know, seeing 6-7 people a day, not having a clue what I was going to say to them anymore, because everything I knew before was kind of chucked. But I had no language for this. There were no techniques. There was nothing that I knew to do. And so I just sat with my clients and told them what happened to me. And lo and behold, they started changing. And they would say things like, why didn't you tell me this before? This makes so much sense. Now you're telling us actually how to live rather than telling us why we're screwed up, why we feel the way we do. You're actually giving us an understanding that is helping us to navigate through life in a way that we can rid ourselves of unnecessary thinking that's getting in the way of insight and wisdom and enjoyment and clarity and all the things that we all want when we go see a therapist. You know, we really want to feel happy. We want to not feel stressed. We don't want to feel depressed. We don't want to feel anxious. But what we do want to feel is what we came into the world with, which is a natural joy, a natural ability to be creative and curious and forgiving and loving and compassionate. And all the other possibilities are there too. We cry and we get upset and we get angry and we experience the whole range of emotion as children because it's natural to feel all feelings. It's natural to feel any feeling that comes into your mind as a thought. So that's the way we're built. And but I thought I had to work at doing something to get that feeling. I didn't know that if I let my thoughts settle by not analyzing my thinking, but by simply being aware of the fact that I was thinking and creating whatever world I was seeing. That what changed for me that weekend was that instead of thinking that my life came from out there and in the past and in the future and everywhere but right here, it just completely changed everything. Totally. It was like I had a telescope. I have a telescope over here and I look out at the birds with and I had it turned around the wrong way. And I was looking out and I could never see the birds. Well, where are they? And when Sid said, turn it around, it's coming from within you out through the power of your mind and thought and consciousness to create this magnificent reality that we get to be in. And that, again, I had a hard time with this, a really hard time. And I fought with it back and forth in my head for a few years, I might say. Because I had a lot of, I've said I'm a recovering psychologist. I had a lot of good education, trained with the best, people that I thought knew better than me. And what this was a paradigm shift, Brad, in all of you. It was a complete different set of assumptions about human experience. And that's hard to swallow. All through history, when there's been a paradigm shift, Galileo, Copernicus, Newton, many Brits have brought in paradigm shifts. Einstein, just the Michael Faraday, the great father of electricity and the motor, and another great inventor. When he came up with his discovery of the field of energy and saw it and understood how it worked, he could invent all of these things. And his professor, I can't remember his name, shunned him away and had him work on lenses for 4 years because he was jealous that Faraday had come up with this paradigm shift and he hadn't. So that's what happens when you, within your own mind, if you see a paradigm shift, or what happens in the world's collective mind, if a paradigm shift happens, it threatens the status quo of how I see life. If that's true, then everything I've thought before is false, or most of it. Not all of it, but most of it is false. So as a psychologist, this was a big shift for me, and most of my colleagues who I've shared this with turned their back on me and walked away and thought I was crazy, that this was too simple, He must be using drugs. He's found Jesus, or, they had all these reasons why I was so happy and was getting so much better results. It couldn't be that I had found something. And so that was kind of the beginning for me, and I learned from my clients. My clients showed me with their life changes that this is really true. It's like, oh, this really works. And I wondered about it with alcoholics because I thought they were different. And they showed me as much as anyone that, I just got a letter from someone a few minutes ago, an email, who said, from Scotland, that actually she wants me to come to Scotland and do some training there. And she said, I read your book 20 years ago, and I've been in recovery for 25 years, but I was miserable in my recovery. And when I read about these principles and that I was already healthy, it just changed me. Yesterday I was riding up north to my cabin, and I stopped to get a cup of coffee, and the gal who was in the window at the coffee shop said, "Are you Joe Bailey?" And I was like, he says, I've been in sobriety now for 12 years, ever since I realized that I was already healthy. Up until then, I'd had 12 treatments, and I saw myself as this sick alcoholic. And suddenly, just knowing that jewel was in there. And this is not, there's 5 cars behind me. I said, I probably better go. She said, "Oh, come on. I can't believe I'm getting coffee." So it's very powerful, as you know, Brett, and as all you are seeing, if you haven't yet, the power of just understanding the simplicity of how our psychological experience is created through the power of thought, and that we have this infinite capacity for new thinking that leads to seeing beauty in front of us, to seeing solutions when we have challenges, to seeing innocence when we see people who are acting in bad ways, in negative ways. We see them with innocence, and we feel compassion rather than judgment. And so for me, the principles, getting back to what you wanted me to talk about, Brett, when I saw the principles, one of the implications of that insight for me is that I'm less and less interested in the future or the past. It takes up less time in my head. I still have regrets. I still have guilt. I still have worry. I still have fear. I have all of those emotions and thoughts, but they're passing thoughts. I don't jump in this pond and stir them up nearly as much. I still do occasionally. Nobody's perfect, right? We all, wait, I need to worry. This is different. I need to worry about this, And so we do it for a while, and then pretty soon we realize, oh, I'm just caught up in my thinking again. There I go again. We call this in the United States flat forehead therapy. Do you know why? Because every time you see it, you're thinking, you're always going, oh, there I go again.
Yeah, I'm wondering how many times how amazing that the forehead on my head can keep recovering.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it too, is that learning these principles isn't trying to be perfect or trying to finally be there, enlightened, or be in the moment now always. No, you're in and out, because your thinking is like weather. It changes all the time. You can't stop thinking from happening. That's another gem I found at the bottom of the pond, that you cannot change your thinking, and you can't prevent your thinking. You can only be aware that you're thinking. And the miracle is, and the implication of it is, that when you realize that you're thinking, you immediately come back to the present moment. So that's the secret of the now, is that when you see that the not now is only because you're creating an illusion of the past or an illusion of the future, or you're projecting your paradigm on someone else, your individual habitual perception on someone else, in a way that's obscuring the clear water. And when you see that, it just brings you back to the now. It brings you back to the now. And a lot of people talk about the now. There's some wonderful people on this planet pushing the now. The Buddhists are pushing the now. The mindfulness people are pushing the now. The Eckhart Tolles of the world, the Katie, what's her name? Katie, can't remember. But there's many wonderful writers now talking about the importance of living in the present moment. Athletes talk about it as being in the zone. When I'm in the zone, in the now, I perform better in golf or football or anything. Musicians talk about being in that zone where you're not even thinking about what you're doing and the music is playing through you. That's the now. So I wrote this book, Slowing Down to the Speed of Love, because I realized in my own relationship that when we were in the now, we were just fine. Even if we were disagreeing, even if we were in conflict, as long as we were in the moment, that our heads were clear, we could communicate from the heart, honestly, without being afraid of it. We could listen like way, way, way better because we didn't have a lot of thoughts going on. We could hear what the other person was saying. And that when we were in that state of mind in the moment with our heads clear, we couldn't help but be in love. We were just naturally in love. And so it was quite by accident that these principles helped me discover the secret of love. And how it was eternal. And it's never not there. It's just we go away from it in our minds because the mind has that power to do evil, to do horrible things, to see things. You know, I still have all that capability to have crazy thoughts. They happen on a regular basis. But my immune system to those thoughts, my psychological immunity is to the point where I can have them and it's like, you know, I might, oh, no, oh, God, oh, look at that person, what they did. You know, like someone pulls in front of you in your car, or you have an impulsive automatic response. But then I can see, oh, I'm just scaring myself with my thinking, you know, because I can feel my thinking. I'm always feeling my thinking. And when I have that awakened moment again, then it just clears. Oh, just get out of their way. Oh, my wife's in a bad mood. Leave her alone. Let her rest. I'm in a bad mood. I should just shut up. For a moment, I think I'm going to just shut up because all these thoughts that I want to say are really not going to do me much good in my marriage. And so I wait for the silk to settle. And then I can talk about an issue, still talk about the issue, but with understanding, with wisdom, with clearer thinking, with sanity, rather than jealousy or hurt or I'm going to be right no matter. I'd rather be right than happy, you know. So anyway, so that's kind of my story. And it's been an amazing 35 years of knowing the principles, and it just keeps evolving me and growing me and giving me new opportunities. And I've gotten to travel all over the world and teach this, and now with Zoom and Skype, you could be anywhere. And the world is so hungry for this understanding. It's so hungry. So anyway, I'm open to, I don't know how long I've spoken. How long have I been jabbering, Brett?
I haven't been keeping track of the time. I've just been sitting listening to you. And I really love listening to you. Yeah. For everybody else on this call, If you want to send me a message with the chat window to have a dialogue with Joe, he's open to it. So if there's something on the mind, please let me know. Joe, one thing that I heard was when about the present moment, the now moment. Some people have criticized themselves for not being in the now. No, they've had the moments of being in the now, but they wonder how to get back to it when they lose it.
Yeah.
Is that something you can relate to?
Yeah, and I think that's been one of the misconceptions about the principles. And again, the principles existed long before Sydney Banks articulated them. They've always been here, just like gravity was there long before Newton discovered it. And the planets didn't just suddenly start reacting to gravity when he discovered it, or any object. So one of the things that people notice about people who live in their mental health, little kids, just if you forget about what mental health is, look at a 3-year-old. They'll show you what it looks like. They're in the now. They're not always worried and not always in regret. They're like they get in an argument or something, and then all of a sudden they're back to the moment playing with their friend, and they've forgiven them. It's like it didn't happen. They're just moment to moment. Animals are moment to moment. My cat, people's dogs, they're moment to moment. So people have observed the people who are happier or who are doing better seem to be more in the now. So that's a good idea. I think I'll try to be in the now. Or even in the 3 Principles community for a long time, and me included, would teach people what you need to do to be happy is to live in the present. And it's kind of ass backwards, pardon my French. It's kind of getting the telescope turned around the wrong way again. Instead of trying to do the present, the present is what exists when you quit doing, when the silt settles. It's like silence. You can't yell and say, "Come on, silence, give me some silence. I want silence." Everything you're doing to get silence is keeping it away. So living in the present is an artifact, an implication of recognizing that you're thinking in the moment. And so the more that the principles are what, seeing the principles in the moment, seeing that whatever I'm feeling, I have to be thinking it, consciously or unconsciously, knowingly or unknowingly. I'm having a thought that's creating that feeling. And that's what feelings are for. They're to wake you up to the fact that you're thinking. They remind you that you're thinking again. They're going, "Oh, yes, I'm thinking again." The feelings are there. And if you ignore them, they just get louder and louder and louder until you realize, "Oh, it's my thinking." Like I've had psychotic patients, as crazy as they could be, hallucinating like crazy, say to me after a while, "I think I'm really crazy right now." I think my mind's out of balance. I think I might need to up my meds. Even in their insane moments, they can see it gets so bad, maybe I am a little off. Okay, so that's like an extreme example, but all of us have built into us these feelings that when you get in the future, do you feel blissed out? Generally, if you're in the future thinking about something you'd love to do, yeah, you're happy. But if you're thinking about something you're worried about, a meeting tomorrow, that's a big deal that you've got to do really well at, or if you've got something that you did yesterday that you wish you hadn't done and you feel really bad about it, and you're thinking about that, you feel bad, right?
Yeah.
You feel a sick feeling in you. You feel a heaviness. It doesn't feel like warm and fuzzy in there. So uncomfortable feelings are an alert mechanism, a warning system to let you know you could be thinking this into existence. And the second that you see that in the moment, it takes you into the now. So let's say, for example, you're in a crisis. A robber is at your door, breaking in, and you go into a panic. And you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? You know, what if he kills me? What if he rapes me? What if he strangles me? What if he chops my body up into little bits, or whatever you're thinking? And you're not going to react very well. It might be your roommate that lost their keys and is trying to get in the house, and you'll attack them. But if your mind is calm, you're going to see how to respond to danger with a clear head. When I work with police, sometimes, and I teach them how to be present during a dangerous crime situation. When someone has a weapon. In this country, we have a lot of guns. We're really crazy over here. I'm going to have a lot of business the rest of my life. So when police are in a dangerous situation, the first thing they have to remember to do is to remain calm, to not over anticipate what might happen to them or to the other person. If they overthink it, they don't see clearly what to do and how to respond in an intelligent way. So the now, that's why people value the now so much. It's so, people are better in athletics, they're better as soldiers, they're better as doctors, they're better as therapists, they're better as spouses, they're better behaved kids, they're better parents when people are in the now. But trying to be in the now keeps you from being in the now. If you don't understand thought, that's why the principles are so important. If you don't see that the not now is just your thinking, you're not fighting with the future, you're not fighting with the past, you're just caught up in your thinking. And when you see that, telescope in right position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. What occurs for me is, what is it that makes us see our thinking?
Consciousness. We're conscious. That's what consciousness is. Consciousness is the gift of awareness. It allows us to see ourselves from above. You know, I met this guy that did studies on near-death experiences, a doctor. He interviewed thousands of people who had had near-death experiences. In every case, the person felt like they were up here in the room observing themselves, you know, in the car, on the hospital bed, wherever they had just died. They had this consciousness that was separate from the brain and the body. There's a very famous brain surgeon in Ontario, Toronto, Ontario. And he was the guy that mapped the brain, you know, where sight was and memory and emotions. And because he was a brain surgeon, he'd stimulate the brain with an electrode. And as he did it, he would map it out. And he wrote a book about this, and he said the only thing he couldn't stimulate on the brain was awareness, self-awareness. He could stimulate every memory that a person had, but then he would ask them, where are you right now? And they'd say, oh, I'm in the hospital, I'm having brain surgery. That was, well, I thought you were just at your 5-year-old birthday party. Oh no, that was just my memory. So they had this self-awareness, even though in the moment while it was being stimulated, it was real. So that's the way it is. The mind and the brain make whatever thought comes into our brain look real through the senses. We experience it, but we also have this consciousness that can be aware that we're doing it while we're doing it. We're not always at a high consciousness. Sometimes we're at a really low consciousness, a low mood, really like this in our thinking. And then, but with the understanding of the principles, we have the flat forehead thing happens, and then the thoughts start to go out. Well, oh, these are thoughts. My wife isn't an evil person. I'm just thinking she is. I'm not thinking that the day is really not rotten just because it's really windy and rainy out there. It's just my perception of it, because that's how I'm perceiving it. It's just rain. Rain's neutral. It's not good or bad. It's just neutral. Now, you might think, well, there are things that really are bad, right? How many of you are thinking that? Yeah, well, even if you're around, like you watch the news, let's say. I wrote another book called Fear Proof Your Life, because after 9/11, when the terrorists hit New York and Washington, D.C., the media in this country got even more obsessed with fear-mongering. And it was just, every show was about what could happen and how horrible it would be. And so people were addicted to the news. And the news noticed this, and they realized, this fear thing really works. We can keep them tuned in. And so we get afraid, and then we feed that fear because we want to know the unknown. When we're afraid, we try to figure out what might happen in the unknown. And as soon as we do that, we knock out our present moment and our capacity for new thinking, for insight. And when we lose that, then we don't respond well to the now. We don't see, well, there's nothing I can really do about that. It's happening on the other side of the planet. It's terrible, it's awful, but right here, right now, geez, I'm having a really great day. And I can be a human being and feel compassion for that, but I don't have to live my life around every horrible thing that's happening on the planet. So knowing that allows me to watch the news without being completely freaked out by it. Stay informed, but don't ruin my life. And I've worked a lot with news and been on TV and radio and all that a lot with my books. They're not interested in what's going on in the world. They're only interested in the tragedies. So if you watch the news, you get a very distorted view of the world, especially if you're watching Rupert Murdoch's news. I'm sorry. Yeah, he's an Australian. I think he owns doesn't he own the London Globe or something, or a bunch of newspapers there? Rupert Murdoch. Anyway, so I kind of lost my point. What was my point? Help me, Brett.
Yeah, it was we get a lot of information that doesn't reflect the outside world.
Yeah, when we get afraid, we lose our ability to respond in the moment intelligently. Now, a little bit of fear makes us more alert. But then if we get our thinking too involved, it obscures the alertness. We start projecting our thoughts out rather than really seeing what's happening and responding to it appropriately. So um, this living in the moment's a really cool thing. It's very useful, but you don't have to learn how to do it. You already know how to do it. It's built into you.
Yeah.
And the principles just point out that, hey, guess what? We're always in the moment, even if we don't know it. We're in the moment.
So what really struck me was I was going to ask you to talk about what it means to slow down, but somehow you've already done it. You've already spoken about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I can say more about that. Or does anybody have any questions?
I have one from Tammy. I'm just going to unmute her now. Okay, Tammy?
Thank you. Hi, Jason. Very nice to meet you.
Hi, Tammy. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay, that's grand. That's grand. You were talking before about moods and consciousness, and my understanding about moods and consciousness is flip-flopped all over the place. In my
I'm sorry, what was that word? What you said? My understanding of consciousness, but there was another word.
Consciousness and moods has.
Oh, mood. Oh, moods. Okay.
Yeah, has just flip-flopped so much. I'm trying to understand, like, so was it the funky thought that I had that created this feeling that's now put me in a bad mood, but then there was the understanding that I came across that it was moods were more like changing internal weather patterns, and you just kind of rode them out. And I see the truth in both, and I was wondering what you thought about that.
Well, I see them as both true, just like you do. So there you go, Tammy. I agree with you, because sometimes I can lower my mood with my thinking, right? Mm-hmm. I'll be fine, just fine, and all of a sudden I'll think about something that I'm worried about, and my mood will just start to go down because of the heaviness of thought, you know, and because I'm experiencing that thought as a feeling. If it's a negative thought, I'm going to feel lower and lower and lower. But human beings have moods that aren't necessarily anything that they're thinking about. You know, you're in a room that doesn't have oxygen or much oxygen. Pretty soon you feel anxious, right? If you're oxygen, or if you're on an airplane and the oxygen system's not working, you'll get anxious feelings. Now your mind then will start thinking, why am I anxious? Oh, maybe this plane is going to crash, or, you know, you start creating something out of that physiological mood state, you know, or like people that have chemical imbalances or hormonal imbalances or allergic reactions or biological responses to atmosphere. Let's say you're in a highly polluted atmosphere or a toxic atmosphere where there's poison in the air. That's gonna affect your mood. But how you think about that is going to determine whether that takes you down or that you see, gee, something's wrong here. I think I need to open a window, or I need some fresh air. So even if you wake up, have you ever woken up crabby, anybody? I don't even know why I'm crabby. I haven't had even time to think yet, and I'm crabby already. If I analyze my crabbiness or my depressed feeling, I'll come up with a lot of good reasons to feel crabby and depressed. So I'm adding to it. But if I wake up and I'm just in kind of a low mood, and I just don't give it much thought, but I just listen to that, I'll probably have an insight about what to do. I think I'll exercise. You know, that always takes me out of it. Or I think I'll meditate, or go for a walk, or take a shower, you know, or I don't know. Something will pop into my head. That's the beauty of insight. You never know what it's going to tell you from moment to moment. But it'll usually occur to you that, something that will help your mood come up, or you'll just see, well, people have moods and this will pass. I have allergies at certain times of the year. And when I get them before I know I'm having them, I'll have some really bizarre thoughts and think, God, whoa, this is quite a movie going on in here. And then my wife has the same allergies, and she'll start getting that way too. And all of a sudden we'll look at each other and say, allergy season has just started. We're in the middle of and we realize, it has nothing to do with, it's just, we're in a mood from a brain imbalance. The histamines have exploded in our brain, and so there's a physical component to this psychological experience. But what we do with it, with our thinking, is the critical thing.
It's really interesting you said that. Yeah. Sorry.
Like, you can have physical pain. People with chronic pain, their pain is real. And it can make you cranky when you got a lot of pain. Right? But if you get into, why does this happen to me? What's the matter with me? What did I do to deserve this? What did I do in my past? Or, why can't they do something to fix me? Or, you get into that kind of thinking rather than just being aware that you're in pain. You be present. When I'm present with my pain, I had a really bad back problem a year ago. And if I thought about it too much, my pain increased. But when I just accepted it and went to the pain, it relaxed and it dissipated. So when my first wife was having our son, we took Lamaze training, which was childbirth training. And she would learn to breathe into the pain and just accept the pain and not fight it and not tighten up with it, but just relax into it, and the pain would dissipate. It's kind of like that with a mood. If you are just aware of it and you don't judge it and you don't, I got to get back in the present, or, I got to do these 3 principles right. I must not be doing it right. I'm in a crabby mood. If you just are accepting and aware of what is, it has a tendency to shift and move. It's like water. Water in a stream. If you dam it up, it pools. And all the debris coming down that stream gets blocked. And it makes the water murky. So when we judge our thinking as bad or good, there's good thinking and bad thinking, or wise thinking, or low consciousness thinking, or stupid thinking, or smart thinking. If we judge our thinking, it dams it up. Don't think about that. I shouldn't be thinking this way. I shouldn't be so judgmental. I shouldn't be, I don't know. Sometimes it's appropriate. I don't know. So if you open the dam, it will clean out the debris in short order, and the water will be clear again, right? Well, it's like that with our mind. When we don't judge our thinking as good or bad. We just see and feel its effects, and then the mind clears it up. See, supermind, we call this course supermind, right? Yeah. Supermind, it does all the work. It does all the heavy lifting. You don't have to really do anything but be aware. And when you're aware, when you're conscious that you're thinking, it is like a big vacuum cleaner for thought. It sucks it up. it gives you an insight. It gives you a new way of thinking about it. It's just, the more I know that over the last 34 years, the deeper I know that, the more relaxed in my being I feel. I just feel cozy in here, you know? I feel comfortable in my own skin more. And before, I felt really uncomfortable in my own skin. I was just trying to improve myself all the time. I was trying to fix myself. I was trying to think through things. I was trying to do a lot of self-improvement. I was just, because I thought there was something the matter with me. I was incomplete. I was damaged goods. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't wise enough. And so I tried to change myself. And I now see that when I'm doing my best is when I'm trying the least to do the best. It's a paradox. Because trying is ego. And ego is trying to be in control of yourself and in control of life. And when you see the oneness of everything, you realize there's nothing really to do. I mean, I don't mean that, you know, like I'm doing something right now, right? I'm doing this talk, and I work with organizations and I work with hospitals and I teach people these concepts. So I'm doing a lot. I'm writing books and I'm doing things, but it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything. It just, and if it does feel like I'm doing something, it's one of those moments I realize, oh, I'm trying too hard here. Like I was given a seminar to one of the most prestigious hospitals in America, and all the top doctors and researchers. These guys, I was the average kid in the class. These were all the guys at the top of the class in high school. I was the CB student. They were the straight A students. Okay, so I'm talking to this group, and I had some thoughts about that when I got, what am I doing here talking to these guys? You know, and I felt insecure for a moment. I started feeling, oh God, how is this going to go? Geez, you know, is this going to sound too spiritual for these people? Or is this going to sound flaky? Or, because they're scientists. Everything has to be double-blind controlled studies. And so this one doctor, a surgeon, he was a combat surgeon in the military. So you got to kind of get a hint about his personality. He was very pugnacious and aggressive. And after about the first hour, he stood up and he just said, "This is a bunch of crap." He says, "You got to just be in control when you're a surgeon. You have to be in control of your nurses. You have to be in control of the patients, or they'll lose confidence in you." And he just totally assailed me in front of the group. And I thought, oh, crap. You know, one of these moments, you know, and I just didn't know what to say. And I said, let's take a break, because I recognized I lost my bearings. I had started to think too much. So I took a break and I talked with Keith, who I was doing this with. I said, Keith, we're losing the group here. We've got to shift gears. And he says, yeah, boy, I know it. He says, this is not going well. And we had a lot invested in it. That was the problem. So I said, well, I'm going to go back in there, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I'm going to know what to do. I don't know what I'm going to say, but I know I'm going to know what to say. So just let me take it for a bit. And I just had this knowing. I don't know what, but I knew I knew I was going to know what to say when I got there, but I didn't know what I was going to say. And I walked right up to the guy after we got back together, and I stood right in front of him, toe to toe, and I just said, look, Tony, I totally respect the way you're thinking about this, and that's helped you in very dangerous situations. And I know that's really served you well. And I'm not here to try to change you. All I ask is that you listen to what I have to say and see if there's anything here that's helpful to you. So let me teach you, okay? Is that all right if I teach you about that? And then you can see if you want to keep it or not, or throw it out. And everybody says, yeah, Tony, shut up and listen to him, will you? So the group kind of did, reinforce what I was saying, but I did it in a really nice way. Now, I don't know why I did that. I don't know how I did that. I just did it. And I couldn't have rehearsed that or anything. It just came out of mind. But I know I can trust my mind to give me whatever I need to do in the moment. Now, in the moment before that, I must not have known it because I got insecure. So I forget. What I'm telling you right now, I forget. When it's up against the wall time, I have a moment where I forget. But my feelings, I'll feel the room drop. I'll look, I'll see it. I can see I'm in my head. I'm caught up in thought. And I just let the silt settle. And I know as soon as it settles, I'll see what to do. Now, I know that a lot more than I knew that 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 30 years ago. So it's an evolutionary process. But every time I see that, I'm just as in the now as I am in the now. If you followed that.
Yeah.
So every time you're in the now, you're already completely there. And you'll never be any further there than when you're in the now. So if how many of you have had the experience of being in the now? Nod your head if you have. Yeah, everybody, right? So everybody's been in the presence of mind. They say, he had a lot of presence of mind. Well, that's quite a statement, a presence of mind. Well, in the sense that we talk about mind, supermind, infinite mind, mind that is all-knowing, all-encompassing, that's connected to everything. That kind of presence of mind is what makes you good at whatever you do. And it allows you to enjoy your life completely. So now those same docs, almost a year later, are saying, wow, I wish I had learned this in medical school, or, this has changed my life completely. It's like, I'm able to better do my job. But now I'm able to enjoy my job instead of feeling burned out and stressed and overwhelmed and fearful. Now I feel I can handle anything. Doesn't mean everybody that I work on is going to live. Doesn't mean I'm going to be a miracle worker. It just means that I'm going to be the best I can at that moment. I'm going to show up for the present moment. Gee, this has been fun. So far, anyway. I might completely fall apart here any minute. I don't know.
So are you okay with that, Cami?
Yes, that was fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Okay, next we have Chris. She's going to unmute you now. Hello, Chris.
Thank you. I have a question. Yeah. Well, the question, what came up while I heard you speaking was I've been the last 5 years or so working in the field of people with attention deficit disorders. I've been teaching them cognitive skills and mindfulness. And one of the things I found out was that I hadn't really, I didn't really feel that the cognitive behavioral training was working. So I got this idea, I'll try mindfulness, and I got permission to do it, and no one was controlling what I was doing. So in a way, I was just trying to be playing it by ear, and I was also changing some of the exercises from that you usually use. And at one point, what you said about the working as if it's no effort, or I had this experience that what was actually working was being nice and present. So when people came and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm late," I'd just say, "Oh, it's so wonderful to see you. I'm so happy that you're coming," and I just kept on doing that, and I meant it. I didn't really analyze what was going on, and then they started showing up even more, and I started listening, because and one of these young people came up to me and said, "You're so different. I've never experienced anyone do that before." Being used to being scolded, or that it's a great problem. It's all of a sudden something else was going on. So I had this experience. At the same time, one is also saying that people who have attention deficit disorders are too much in the now, meaning that for example, not understanding that things have a consequence. I'd like to buy this and this, and I buy it, and at the end of the month, I've used the money for the rent, that kind of thing. So in traditional psychiatry, you'd say you need an inhibitor. You need something to slow down. But I'm not. But I think I'd like to hear your take on ADHD from a 3P perspective, please.
Well, I would have been diagnosed as ADD in school if they did that when I was a kid. I was very distractible. They call me the shiny object guy, right? And when I met Sid, I was Mr. Shiny Object. When I met Sid Banks. So I was a psychologist, but I was just all over the map. It was just, I was so busy and hyper. I was very I had a lot of energy. I didn't sleep a lot. I was just always fell in love on a regular basis when I was single. I was just anyone. Oh, I think I'm in love with her. Oh, I'm in love with her. I like this and that. I was just totally ADD. So for the first time in my life, I felt when I met Sid and I went on that first weekend, I felt like I had calmed down. I was present, and it was weird. It was like I'd spent my 20s going on all these wilderness adventures, because when I was, climbing a mountain or rock climbing or whitewater canoeing, I'd have to be in the present. Mm-hmm. So I kind of became addicted to activities that would make me be in the present, because it felt so good. Because when you're present, it feels so good. Mm-hmm. And when you're all over the map, it feels so bad. You feel so, it's not fun being ADD. Even though ADD people can become very successful, they can put that energy to a positive use. And they can also destroy their life with it, like you said, overspending or, cheating on their relationship because they find someone that distracts them in a better way. So it's not a very functional thing. So when I learned this, I decided to go down and spend a year as an intern, a postdoc fellowship in these principles in Miami. And they said, well, before you learn this to help other people, you have to get it for yourself. And I said, yeah, okay, well, I already got it. So, tell me how to help other people. They said, no, you don't. You don't know how to relax even. So we want you to, we're not going to have class this afternoon. We want you to just go to the beach and instead of going scuba diving and playing volleyball, we want you to just lay there and just enjoy the beach.
Mm.
That was like asking a heroin addict to get off of heroin for me. I did not know how to do it. I had to almost like force myself. But I started to, because I didn't really value being present. I valued doing a lot, being very productive, always being active. I was an interesting man, I wanted to be really interesting. It was total ego. It was like, I was really good at this, really good at that. I was good at all these things, and I always try to get better at them. And but I had a million hobbies, and I was just all over the map. So for me to sit on a beach was just like, this is the most boring thing I can imagine to do. What could possibly be the point? But I learned through experience the value of that, and I started to sleep. I started sleeping like 12 hours a day during this internship, and I was like, this is really weird. And I would not do anything, and I have to go take a nap, and it was like years of exhaustion. I was catching up with it. So what happened with me is that I still have the tendency for shiny objects. I think my brain is wired that way. Mm-hmm. But I'm present with that, and I can see myself going for the shiny object. So I see that hyperactive thinking, and it short circuits it. So for me, it cured me of hyperactive attention deficit disorder, where I could sit down and learn how to play the guitar, write a book, read a book. For God, I couldn't even read a book. I couldn't sit still long enough to read a book. Now I can do things that take attention and concentration, and it's so that's my personal response to your question. But I've worked a lot with people with ADD and learning disabilities, kids in schools who are failing because of their ADD, and learning the principles has remarkable impact on their ability to study. Mm-hmm. I have one kid was in college, and he could never sit still long enough to study or sit in. It was really hard for him to be in class. He'd want to be texting the whole time, or he just couldn't sit there and listen long enough. And he said after he learned what I taught him about the principles, his grades just went way up, because he said, he found class really interesting. Mm. Now, he found it interesting because he had less on his mind. And so he actually was interested in what he was hearing. But when you're ADD, you can't be there long enough to get interested. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Does that make sense to you?
Oh, very, very much. I think it's very important. I have it myself to some degree, and what I've realized, I've been to some seminars, Free Principles, and I can sit down in a chair and totally relax, and not do anything. And it's really, really been nice getting this gift of just being in the now, and without any effort at all. It's no, and I did teach mindfulness, but what I'm experiencing with the principles is that now it's different, because it's not mindfulness; it's something else happening. So just I'm just so happy to hear your experiences, and thank you for your personal sharing. I'm teaching the principles to this group of people now, and just starting up, because I'm trying to find out how to do it, and that's too much thinking. But anyway,
you're already doing it,
yeah,
and you just telling your clients your story is going to be gold to them, because it's like an alcoholic helping another alcoholic. If you're in recovery, you're not drinking, oh, well, I'll listen to that guy, he's been where I've been. So that's really helpful. So that's one thing, but you can't teach what you don't know. So what you're learning that's helping you is the best way to help your clients. You just keep learning it more, discovering more of it. You get better and better at helping those people. Now I'll take one more question.
Okay, everybody, one more question. I'm awaiting somebody to come in. So,
or you, Brett, if no one else has a question.
Yeah, just waiting for somebody to type in. I had an insight as you were talking about the physical element that can determine our psychological experience. So, for example, overeating or having negatives that can lower our moods. And I thought it's just my thinking, but it's not me that's creating my moods. So I thought I was creating it, so I went into a place of denial. So, something shifted for me there. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I really felt something in that moment. So, and then I heard my wisdom coming through saying, if I want to get better, I really have to look after myself more. So, and I'm still in shock about that, because I thought it were two completely separate things, but somehow they've merged. So for me, I just want to thank you for sharing that.
Well, that's beautiful, Brett. And when I talk about really trusting in your mind, which is the whole point of mindfulness, by the way. Mindfulness is a beautiful thing. It's just that there's doing to it, and we're just showing kind of a shortcut to that's portable, and there's not a lot of doing to it. But I think the research and all that on mindfulness is wonderful. But mind is what we're really looking for. We've lost our mind. As they say, when you go crazy, you lose your mind. Well, that's true. You lose awareness of the mind, because the mind, it's like, I love what you said, what you heard something unexpected. And for me, it's, even though mind is impersonal, I experience it very personally as a thought that comes in my head and says, Joe, have you thought of this? Or Joe, you're just fine. You're just fine. Don't worry. It's okay. So where did that come? It's like, where did that come from? And I'm starting to see that's the voice of my true mind, that's so loving and so benevolent and so wise and so concerned about me. And I know it's impersonal, but it feels like a best friend. It's I just feel so taken care of, so guided, so blessed, You know, like I talked to the scientist last week at this hospital, and I was talking to the CEO. We were out hiking in the mountains. That's how we do our coaching. We go hiking in the mountains. And he says, you know, if you talked about this spiritually in the beginning, none of us would have listened to you. He said, but we're all having mystical experiences. And he says, and I've been an atheist my whole life. He said, I'm not a religious guy, but I feel spiritual now, and I've never felt spiritual. And I don't know what to make of it. He says, but I just feel so connected and so taken care of and so guided that something's going on. I don't know what it is. And that's, to me, kind of what happened, or what I took from what you said, Brett. I may miss it, but that's what I took.
Yeah, you mentioned mine being a best friend. The best friend I never knew I had. That kind of realization. I mean, it's so profound somehow. It seemed to know everything and know what's best for me in the moment. And that's given me something to go forward with. It's quite freaky, actually.
Quite what?
It's quite freaky, actually.
Freaky?
Freaky, yeah. I mean, it's...
Yeah. It's a little... And I don't mean to make it sound woo-woo or anything like that. It's real ordinary. It's so ordinary, but it's just that universal intelligence coming through my human mind. And it feels like a supportive best friend. And for other people, that might be a very different experience. I'm not saying that's the way it should be or anything. I'm just saying that's how it is for me. And so whether it's true or not, I don't really care. It sure feels good. It's just wonderful.
It is very ordinary. That's what's making me uncomfortable at the moment. It's ordinary of the most ordinary kind. It's too simple in a way, but there's a beauty about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, just let it sit there. See what happens.
Yeah, that will do. Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Joe. Okay. Before we close up the call, I haven't had any more responses from other people to say anything. Is there any last words you would like to say before we bring this to a close, Joe?
It's just delightful to talk to all of you, and I felt your presence, even though I couldn't see all of you, and it was very enjoyable. And I'm looking out on this beautiful day. Let me show you my day here in Minnesota. So that's what I'm looking out at, and I'm up on my vacation, so I'm at the cabin, and it's nice to share it with you guys.
Yeah. And lastly, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I have a website, joebailey&associates.com, and it's spelled out. Joe Bailey and is spelled out, associates. It's all spelled out. And I have a new website, just came up last week, so it's kind of incomplete right now. My videos aren't up yet, but they should be shortly, my website guy assures me. And so my old website had a lot of video on it and TV interviews and that kind of thing. And that'll all be up there in the next week or so. But there's still a site, and you can see my books and learn a little bit more about me on there. But unfortunately, these things always take a little longer than you think they're going to take.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Joe. And we've got you coming back here again, I think in November or December. So that's something I'm really looking forward to again.
Well,
yeah, and
you're doing a good thing, Brett. Keep it up.
I will do. Yeah. Okay. And so lastly, I'm now going to press unmute all to everybody, so everybody can have an opportunity to say goodbye or whatever you want to do. So everybody, off we go.
Hello. Bye.
Thanks, John.
Bye. Bye. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye, Joe. Bye.
Goodbye.
Yeah, that's cool. I like
guys.
that.
Bye, Joe.
Bye,
Bye.
Okay, everybody, thank you. Goodbye. Take care.
Bye.